Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at a project that has the potential to really change the way global trade works. The India, Middle East, Europe corridor, the IMS for short.
Right.
And it's a network of railways, ports, roads, all meant to connect those three major regions.
Right.
Kind of like a modern Silk Road.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, on paper, it sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
They're promising something like 40% faster shipping times and a 30% cost reduction compared to just using the Suez Canal.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Huge potential.
It definitely has the potential to be a game changer.
But looking at some of the stuff that you sent over, it seems like maybe the reality on the ground is a bit more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, the IME, it was announced back in 2023, and there's a lot of excitement around it, especially because of the idea of better relations between Arab nations and Israel. You know, that was really seen as a cornerstone of the whole project. But since then, the escalation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has really thrown a wrench in the works, and it's created a lot of uncertainty and hesitancy for some of the countries that are really important to this whole thing working.
Yeah, that's definitely the elephant in the room. And it seems to be hitting the western leg of the corridor.
Yeah.
What our sources are calling West Asia.
Right.
Pretty hard.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia and Jordan.
Right.
Two pretty important countries in the region are kind of pumping the brakes.
Yeah, well, their close cooperation with Israel is essential for the IMS to actually work in that region.
Right.
So given what's happening politically, it makes sense that they're moving cautiously.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot.
For sure.
It's like they're trying to walk through a minefield. They have to balance the potential economic benefits of something like this with the political realities and the sensitivities around the conflict.
Yeah, any wrong move, and the whole thing could blow up in their faces.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly why this western part of the IMS is facing a slowdown.
Right.
It's not really about, like, official diplomatic relations. It's about optics and potential backlash.
Yeah, no leader wants to look like they're putting trade deals ahead of these bigger issues and the human cost of what's happening over there.
Right.
So while the western side of things is kind of on hold, what about the east? What about the connection between India and the UAE?
Well, that's a completely different story.
Okay.
The India-UAE partnership is actually doing extremely well. Trade between the two has almost doubled in just the last few years.
Oh.
It's gone from $43.3 billion in 2021 to $83.64 billion in 2023-2024.
That is a massive jump.
It is.
What's driving that? Is it just oil, or is there something more to it?
No, it's definitely more than just oil. I mean, oil is still a big part of it.
Sure.
But non-oil trade has also doubled,
which
shows that there's a much broader economic relationship developing. We're seeing a lot more trade in things like manufactured goods, technology services.
So it's not just about raw materials anymore. India is moving up the value chain.
Exactly.
Exporting more finished products and really becoming a bigger player on the world stage.
And they're not just focused on the amount of trade.
Okay.
They're also focusing on making the process smoother and more efficient. A great example of that is the virtual trade corridor that they've set up.
What is that?
So it's a digital system that uses blockchain technology to make the whole trade process between India and the UAE a lot smoother. It cuts down on paperwork, reduces the need for physical inspections, makes everything faster and a lot more transparent.
So it's kind of like a digital superhighway for goods and services?
Exactly.
Bypassing all the old roadblocks and bottlenecks?
Right.
That sounds incredibly efficient.
It is, and the results are clear. The virtual trade corridor has helped reduce customs clearance times from days to just hours in some cases.
Wow.
This saves businesses a lot of time and money.
So even with the problems on the western side, the eastern leg is really showing what's possible when countries actually embrace technology and simplify their processes.
Absolutely. It's a great example for other IMEC countries. It shows that even with all the political complexities, economic progress and cooperation can still happen if you have the right approach.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's a bright spot in what can seem like a pretty uncertain situation.
So this virtual trade corridor, is that just for physical goods, or does it include other things as well?
Right now, it's mainly focused on physical goods, but it could easily be expanded to things like services and digital trade in the future.
Okay.
That's the great thing about this system. It's flexible and it can adapt.
So while everyone's talking about the physical infrastructure of the IMS,
Right.
This digital aspect adds a whole other layer of complexity and potential to it.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like a hidden engine driving the whole project forward.
And it really highlights the fact that the IMB is not just a physical corridor. It's a platform for innovation, collaboration, and the use of new technologies that could change how trade is done entirely.
This has been really insightful.
Good.
We've gone from geopolitical roadblocks to digital superhighways, and it's obvious that the IMA is a project with a lot of different aspects.
Yeah.
Both challenges and a ton of potential.
It is. And while most people are focused on trade,
Right.
the IMA could be a lot more than just a trade route. Our sources point out its potential impact on everything from clean energy export to developing undersea cables for faster internet, even creating interconnected energy grids across the whole region.
It sounds like the IMS is laying the foundation for a future where everything is much more interconnected and countries are working together more closely.
It is.
But those bigger goals, like the clean energy and telecom stuff, those will probably have to wait until things calm down in West Asia.
Unfortunately, yeah, those projects need a level of political stability and cooperation that's tough to achieve right now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that everything is on pause. While the Western leg is delayed, India is in a good position to use this time to get ready for when or if the whole corridor becomes fully operational.
So they've got a head start to get their own affairs in order while everyone else is still trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
What are some of the things India can do to really maximize their benefit from the IMC?
Well, first of all, they can focus on upgrading their ports. This means modernizing the infrastructure, increasing capacity, improving efficiency.
So it's about making those entry and exit points really work well for all those new trade opportunities.
Exactly. They need to be sure that their ports can handle the increased volume of trade.
Right.
And that it's all done efficiently and in a way that makes sense cost-wise.
Makes sense.
On top of that, India can develop special economic zones that are strategically located along the corridor route.
I've heard about these special economic zones, but can you explain what they are and why they're important?
Sure. These zones offer a bunch of incentives to attract businesses. Things like tax breaks, simpler regulations, streamlined customs procedures. They're basically magnets for foreign investment.
Okay.
Creating these hubs of economic activity that benefit both India and the companies that operate in them.
So it's about creating these strategically located economic powerhouses all along the corridor to really maximize the benefits for everyone involved.
Exactly.
Interesting.
But probably the most important thing and often the most overlooked is improving India's domestic logistics. This means streamlining transportation within the country itself, making it cheaper and easier to move goods from production centers to the ports and vice versa.
Because what good is a superhighway to the rest of the world if your own internal roads are clogged up and inefficient?
Exactly. Improving logistics is key to making Indian goods more competitive globally.
Right.
The IMEC gives them the path to international markets. But India needs to make sure it can actually move goods smoothly within its own borders.
Okay.
To really take advantage of that access. It's about making the entire supply chain from the factory floor to the port as smooth and cost-effective as possible.
So with all these different countries and projects and moving parts, who's actually in charge of coordinating all this? Is there like a central authority, like a conductor for this massive orchestra?
That's a great question. And it brings us to maybe the most important piece that's missing right now. The IMC Secretariat.
A secretariat.
Yeah.
So you're saying there isn't a central organization dedicated to overseeing the whole IMS project. That seems like a pretty big oversight.
It definitely is a key element that's missing. Without a central body, it becomes a lot harder to coordinate trade rules across all the different countries involved.
Right.
It also makes it tough to really show off the benefits of the IMS to potential investors and to convince more countries to join in.
It's like trying to build a skyscraper without a general contractor.
Yeah.
You might end up with a bunch of floors and walls, but it's not going to work as a cohesive whole.
Exactly. A secretariat would provide that much-needed leadership and coordination.
Okay.
Making sure everyone is working towards the same goal. It would also be a platform for resolving disputes, streamlining processes, and making sure that the IMS benefits all the participating countries fairly.
That makes sense. But even if they do manage to set up a secretariat and work out all the logistical details, it seems like the big issue of this Israeli-Palestinian conflict is still going to be a problem.
You're absolutely right. The sources are clear about that.
Yeah.
The conflict is a major roadblock, especially for the western side of the corridor. It's creating uncertainty and making potential investors hesitant.
Yeah, I get it. Businesses want stability, predictability.
Right.
The conflict throws a wrench into that, making it much harder to figure out if investments in the region are actually going to be worthwhile in the long run.
And this is where the conversation goes beyond just economics and trade.
Yeah.
We're talking about a project with major geopolitical implications. The success of the IMS really depends on finding some kind of resolution to the conflict, or at least a significant de-escalation.
It's a reminder that in this part of the world, you can't really separate economics from politics.
Yeah.
They're completely intertwined. Any big project like the IMS is going to be affected by the overall political climate.
Absolutely. And I think we should also acknowledge the human element here.
Yeah.
This isn't just about abstract concepts like trade routes and infrastructure. It's about real people,
Right.
their livelihoods, and the future of an entire region.
It's easy to get caught up in the big picture,
Yeah.
the grand vision of something like the IMS.
Yeah.
But we can't lose sight of the fact that this project could impact the lives of millions of people,
Right.
for better or worse.
Exactly. And that's what makes the IMS such a fascinating and complex case study. It's both a huge opportunity and a significant challenge.
Yeah.
It has the potential to bring greater connectivity, economic growth, shared prosperity. But it also requires navigating a minefield of political sensitivities and historical baggage.
It's like walking a tightrope. You have to be careful and deliberate with every step you take,
Yeah.
always thinking about the potential pitfalls.
Right.
But if you can make it to the other side, the view is pretty incredible.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for both pragmatism and a bit of idealism. We need to be realistic about the challenges,
Yeah.
but also hold on to that vision of what the IMEC could achieve if those challenges can be overcome.
So where does that leave us? We've looked at the promising start and the unexpected roadblocks and the steps that need to be taken to make this thing a reality.
Right.
We've seen how a project that seems pretty straightforward on the surface is actually super complex,
Yeah.
full of economics, politics, histories, even human psychology.
It's a story that's still being written, a story with multiple potential endings.
Right.
And it's a story that deserves our attention and engagement.
You're right. We can't just sit back and watch it unfold. We need to understand all the details, the complexities, the potential consequences.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the future of the IMS is something we all have a stake in, even if we don't live in the region directly affected by it.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that we live in an interconnected world. And the decisions made in one part of the globe can have ripple effects that reach far beyond its borders. Speaking of ripple effects, you mentioned earlier that even if the conflict in West Asia were magically resolved, there would still be other hurdles for the IMS. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure.
What are some of those other potential roadblocks that could trip this project up?
That's a great question, and it makes us think beyond the immediate crisis and consider the long-term sustainability of the IMS.
Okay.
Even if all the political obstacles vanished overnight, there would still be significant logistical, financial, even cultural issues that need to be addressed.
Like what?
Well, one major challenge would be making sure that all the countries involved actually benefit equally from the IMS.
Right.
You have a mix of economies at different stages of development with different levels of infrastructure and resources.
Yeah.
It's really important to make sure that the IMS doesn't just become a tool for the most developed countries to advance their own interests.
Right.
And leave everyone else behind.
It needs to be a rising tide that lifts all boats.
Exactly. And that requires careful planning and implementation.
Okay.
It might involve targeted investments, capacity building programs, or even some kind of revenue sharing system to make sure the benefits are distributed more fairly.
Those are some pretty big challenges. It sounds like even with best intentions, it's going to be tough to ensure that everyone wins equally.
It won't be easy.
Yeah.
There will be competing interests,
Right.
different priorities, a lot of negotiation. But finding a way to address this issue of equitable benefits is crucial for the IMP to succeed in the long run. If some countries feel like they're being left out,
Yeah.
it could breed resentment
Right.
and undermine the whole project.
You need everyone to feel like they have a real stake in this,
Exactly.
that they're not just pawns being used by the bigger players.
And beyond that issue of making sure everyone benefits fairly, there are also huge logistical challenges to consider.
Okay.
We're talking about coordinating infrastructure projects across multiple countries.
Right.
Harmonizing regulations, standardizing procedures.
Yeah.
It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
That requires a high degree of coordination, communication, and compromise.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare waiting to happen.
It could be if it's not managed well.
Right.
You need everyone on the same page, working from the same playbook
Yeah.
to avoid delays, cost overruns, bureaucratic gridlock.
It's like trying to herd cats, but on an international scale.
And it requires a willingness to adapt and compromise. There will be disagreements and unexpected challenges along the way.
Right.
The key is to have a flexible framework
Okay.
that can handle these changes without derailing the whole project.
So it's not just about the physical infrastructure of ports, railways, and roads.
Right.
It's also about the soft infrastructure of trust, understanding, and a willingness to work together to overcome obstacles.
Exactly. And that brings us to maybe the most crucial element of all, leadership.
Okay.
The IMEC needs strong visionary leaders who can champion the project,
Okay.
inspire confidence, and navigate the inevitable political and logistical challenges.
It needs a conductor who can keep this massive orchestra playing in harmony, even when different sections are playing different tunes.
Exactly. Leaders who can see the big picture, who understand how economics, politics, and culture are all connected,
Right.
and who can bring people together to achieve a common goal.
So what does all this mean for our listeners? For those of us who aren't world leaders or infrastructure experts, why should we care about the IMEC and all its complexities?
It means that the IMEC is more than just a headline-grabbing project. It's a story that's still being written.
Okay.
A story with the potential to change global trade, foster greater cooperation,
Okay.
and create new opportunities for millions of people. It's a story that deserves our attention, our critical thinking, and our engagement.
Because even though the IMS might seem like a distant concept, the decisions made today, the challenges overcome, and the partnerships forged will have effects that go way beyond the borders of the countries involved.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that we live in an interconnected world, where events in one part of the globe can have a huge impact on the rest of us.
Yeah.
And it's a call to action, a challenge to stay informed, engage in thoughtful discussions, and contribute in whatever way we can to building a more connected, prosperous, and peaceful world.
Beautifully said. And on that note, dear listeners, we'll leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
The IMS, it's a journey, not a destination. It's a work in progress, a testament to the power of human ingenuity, ambition, and the enduring hope for a better future.
Powerful stuff.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the complexities of our world.
Great advice.
Until next time, fellow deep divers.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep exploring the complexities of our world. Remember, the IMA is just one story among many. There's a whole universe of fascinating and important stories waiting to be discovered. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep. Until next time,